Greetings everyone. NewZimbabwe.com has a story running, a story published on the 10th of July 2024. The headline says, South African Home Affairs told to unblock Menace ID after stripping him of citizenship based on claims he was Zimbabwean. It says, I quote, a man who was more than 3 years ago suddenly stripped of his South African citizenship by Home Affairs and who had in the meantime lost his job as a result, turned to the court for a final interdict to force the department to block his ID document, close quote. We have been discussing this question. In the last few days, we produced a video where the judgment was that the Department of Home Affairs needed to unblock over 700,000 IDs belonging to South Africans because they were suspected of being foreigners. The period that was granted by the court elapsed. We recorded a video on that, and here we're dealing with another story where someone had to go to court. The article continues, says, the applicant, only identified as FS, told the Gauteng High Court, Pretoria, of the hardships he has encountered after Home Affairs simply took away his citizenship in April 2021 based on unverified claims that he is actually a Zimbabwean national. So they just suspected that this person is Zimbabwean. We once asked in one of the videos to say, how do you tell that one is a Zimbabwean? Because we share similar names with our South African brothers and sisters. We share similar surnames. For instance, I'm a Mabena, born in Zimbabwe. My brothers born in South Africa, also a Mabena. So how do you tell without any verification that this Mabena is a Zimbabwean, this Mabena is South African? By simply looking into their document without interviewing them. But of course, when you speak to me, you will then know that I'm a Zimbabwean because in my dialect, isiNdebele that I speak is different from isiZulu in South Africa and also different from isiNdebele widely spoken in South Africa. But you can't simply when you are perusing through people's documents in the population register and then say we suspect that this person is Zimbabwean, you don't block the ID. The article continues, says, he said his life has been a nightmare since, as he cannot travel, he is now unemployed and he cannot even receive a social grant. This while FS said he had obtained his smart South African ID card decades ago. He married a South African woman and his 4 children all received birth certificates indicating that they are South Africans. So this person has a smart card, right? You know the ID book, right? And people are moving into smart card. So he did apply for a smart card. The smart card came out. He's married to a South African citizen. He is South African, married to a South African citizen. They've got kids. If let's just assume that he was married to a non-South African, maybe we'll say maybe they are basing on that because he's said to be married to a migrant, but he's married to a South African. He's South African, he has a smart card, the kids received their birth certificates, but his ID was blocked. The article continues, says he also submitted proof of his citizenship to the court, who concluded that it is crystal clear that he is a South African. In a bid to prove his South African status, the applicant even underwent DNA tests at his own expense to prove that his South African mother is indeed his blood relative. Right, so going through the DNA to prove that he's South African. This also reminds me of a person that contacted me from Wanongoma in the last 3 days. He sent me an inbox on Facebook. He says, Mabena, I see you are talking about issues around documentation. He says he's a Zulu, he's South African. I think now he's a second person also that approaches me from Guanongoma. He has no birth certificate. Department of Home Affairs says they did an interview that they were coming again so that he can get a birth certificate and an ID. Is now over 17 years. Is still undocumented, right? So you have these challenges among South Africans themselves, that you have South Africans, particularly in rural areas, who are not documented. I remember also assisting one grandmother. Of course, her story was a bit different in that she is South African. Her son was married to a migrant. The children born in South Africa then divorced. So the kids remained with the grandmother, who is South African. The father is South African, and her grandkids are South African, but has been struggling to get the birth certificates, and they reside in Newcastle. So these are the challenges. So the article continues. The applicant complained that Home Affairs stripped him of his citizenship after a forensic investigation done by an unregistered company into his background. This was done at Eskom, where the applicant was previously employed. The report, among others, stated he was born out of wedlock. He said certain portions of the report submitted by the investigators should not be allowed by the court as they are scandalous and vexatious, in that they label him as being born to an illegitimate father. He said this violated the constitutional right to human dignity of himself and his mother. So that's briefly the story. That you have South Africans who are suffering because their IDs are blocked on suspicion that they are not South African, right? Like I've already said, that how do you tell that this person is not South African by simply looking into their documents without interviewing the person? Maybe Home Affairs is a better way of doing that, but my experience or our experience is that we share similar names. Of course, Ngabuto is not a Zulu. I've come to understand that the name Ngabuto is more on the closer side in South Africa. So we'll not get a Zulu by the name Ngabuto or a South African developed by the name Ngabuto. But of course, we have a Nicholas Mabena who happens to be South African, and then we have a Nicholas Mabena who's myself, who's Zimbabwean by birth. So these are the challenges, because our cultures are interlinked. So by simply looking into someone's identity document in the system and then say, no, let's investigate this person. I know that some South Africans who have been having experiences, 700,000 IDs blocked. You obviously going through challenges, losing your job, you cannot have access to other services like any other South African. Please write in the comment section, share with us your own experiences, like this video, subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're on TikTok, please join, please do follow us, otherwise goodbye.